So welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening again, and I welcome all of you on behalf of edureka for this session on the PMP Refresher. And we are going to spend almost 6 hours together refreshing some topics of the PMP which you might have studied earlier, or even if you have not studied, this course is going to give you a quick and a very good overview of what this PMP is all about. What are the course structure, what are the different topics, and what are the tips and tricks to crack this examination, and also most importantly, demystifying some of the myths about the PMP examination. So I'm sure we are going to have a very good session, and I wish and all the best for everyone for the session. And let's get started with this. Let's move ahead, and quick introduction about myself, your host and your trainer for the day. I'm Nishant Shukla. I'm sure you must have seen my profile there. I come with close to 23 years of experience and started working as a techie, spent a good amount of time in technologies, various domains, but gradually started moving to various project management positions. And when you move into the project management, it becomes more like a generic thing. So I worked on the project management and program management, and also worked on portfolio management. And along with my job, I also used to do training. So for past 11 years, I have trained close to 7,000 people across the globe, and I've done trainings for some of the most reputed organizations in the world. If you want to know more about myself, I am there on the LinkedIn. I have my own page on Facebook. You can go there and you can get more details about it. But the journey was pretty interesting. It's been more than 2 decades, and the journey was very interesting because training is something that I always passionate about. I enjoyed giving training on different topics. I do PMP, I do various customized project management, process transformation, process management, leadership, and soft skills programs as well. And well, that's all about myself. As I told you, I'm all there on the LinkedIn and Facebook. In case if you want to stay in touch, remain in touch for any reason, your PMP exam preparation or any career guidance, you can reach out to me. My contact details are all available there over the net. And you can reach out to the support team of edureka as well. They will connect you with me, and I'll be able to help you with any queries that you might have. So welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening again, and I welcome all of you on behalf of edureka for this session on the PMP Refresher. And we are going to spend almost 6 hours together refreshing some topics of the PMP which you might have studied earlier, or even if you have not studied, this course is going to give you a quick and a very good overview of what this PMP is all about. What are the course structure, what are the different topics, and what are the tips and tricks to crack this examination, and also most importantly, demystifying some of the myths about the PMP examination. So I'm sure we are going to have a very good session, and I wish and all the best for everyone for the session. And let's get started with this. Let's move ahead, and quick introduction about myself, your host and your trainer for the day. I'm Nishant Shukla. I'm sure you must have seen my profile there. I come with close to 23 years of experience, and started working as a techie, spent a good amount of time in technologies, various domains, but gradually started moving to various project management positions. And when you move into the project management, it becomes more like a generic thing. So I worked on the project management and program management, and also worked on portfolio management. And along with my job, I also used to do training. So for past 11 years, I have trained close to 7,000 people across the globe, and I've done trainings for some of the most reputed organizations in the world. If you want to know more about myself, I am there on the LinkedIn. I have my own page on Facebook. You can go there and you can get more details about it. But the journey was pretty interesting. It's been more than 2 decades, and the journey was very interesting because training is something that I always passionate about. I enjoyed giving training on different topics. I do PMP, I do various customized project management, process transformation, process management, leadership, and soft skills programs as well. And well, that's all about myself. As I told you, I am all there on the LinkedIn and Facebook. In case if you want to stay in touch, remain in touch for any reason, your PMP exam preparation or any career guidance, you can reach out to me. My contact details are all available there over the net, and you can reach out to the support team of Edureka as well. They will connect you with me, and I'll be able to help you with any queries that you might have. And talking about the topics that we are going to cover today, we are going to talk about the process and the project management framework, how this Pmbok is structured, and we are also going to have a 360-degree overview of the Pmbok Guide 5th edition, which is a latest edition. So it's a very interesting agenda that we have, and I have tried to make it short and crisp as well. Okay. So we are all good to move ahead with our agenda. So let me give you some introduction of Pmbok Guide. So Pmbok stands for Project Management Body of Knowledge. PMI came up with the standard framework, or you can say the collection of the best practices sometime in early 90s. And from that time, they started releasing the updates to it every 3 years. So the latest edition of this Pmbok Guide is 5th edition. As I told you, they give you the update and come up with the updated version of this every 3 years. So the next version, which is the 6th edition of Pmbok, is going to be released on 1st January 2016. So these time and dates are fixed for all across. 1st January 2016, 6th edition will be out, and people who have taken this training on the 5th edition of the Pmbok Guide, for them the cutoff date for the PMP examination is 31st July. So they will have opportunity to take the examination based on 5th edition till 31st July. PMI is going to change the basis of their exam from 1st August. 1st August 2016 will be the cutover date for the latest edition of the Pmbok Guide. So Pmbok Guide is a collection of Pmbok is a collection of the best practices which are submitted and documented by the professionals from all the nooks and corners of the world, from all the industries. Okay. And Pmbok Guide that we have is basically a distilled version of the wider body of knowledge. And this Pmbok Guide is divided into 3 sections. One is your project management framework that we already talked about, your organizational influence in the project life cycle. And then we have process groups and your processes in the process groups. So there are 5 process groups, which is your initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing. And processes. There are 47 processes in Pmbok Guide. 5th edition of Pmbok Guide has 47 processes. In 4th edition, there were 42 processes. They added 5 new processes in this edition, and there may be certain changes in the next edition of that. But as of now, for you, 47 processes. And then there are 10 knowledge areas as well, distinctive knowledge areas. That is your project integration, scope, time, cost, quality, and so on. We are going to go through that. We are going to have a look at those processes and those knowledge areas as well. So this part we have already covered. PM framework, we already covered a very high level view of that. We will quickly review the process group and process group interaction. And I will show you the Pmbok Guide, which will where you will get a glimpse of all the 47 processes mapped to all these 10 knowledge areas. Okay. Now, from the examination point of view, you must be familiar with all the process groups, all the processes, all the knowledge areas, and the mapping of these 47 processes with the process group and the knowledge areas. How we are going to do that, I'll show that to you in some time. So let us first of all understand what is a process. I hope everyone knows what is a process, because process is something that we keep on listening, keep on hearing day in and day out. For example, you have just completed a travel and you came back from the travel, and now is the time to claim the expenses or submit the expenses for the reimbursement. So does it happen like this, that you go to your accounts department, you go to an accounts officer, give him all the bills, and you ask, okay, I spent $200, please pay me $200 cash. He will say, no, I cannot pay you like that. So what you do is, you take this form, fill that up, attach all the original receipts, and pick that into a Dropbox. And every day morning 10 o'clock, we are going to open that box and we'll collect all the form. And then I'm going to check whether all the original receipts are attached or not. Then I'm going to give it to the senior person, senior accounts officer, who will check whether the spend was well within limit or not. Are you eligible for that or not? Once it is all approved, then it will go to probably the accounts manager, who will approve it or reject it. If it is approved, then your company is going to, or your finance department, accounts department is going to deposit the money, not on the random fashion, but maybe they will have their own life cycle. Some companies follow that, okay, twice a month they will release a payment. Some companies will release a payment on the weekly basis. So once the expenses are approved, then in the next cycle you are going to get receive the money, reimbursement. So what is this? This is a process. This is a predefined and predefined set of actions and activities to complete that work. So for each and every element of the project, important element, Pmbok has processes. One of the mistake that people make, most of the people make it, they call this Pmbok guide as a methodology. No, Pmbok guide is not a methodology. Pmbok guide is a collection of processes and knowledge areas, and you can build your own methodology by choosing what processes are relevant and what are not. Okay, so depending on the type of work you're doing, depending on the guidelines of the organization, you can pick and choose the processes, build your methodology, and follow that process. From the PMP examination perspective, you must be very well aware of all these processes. You have to become a champion of these processes. You must understand where these processes are used, in what form they are used. Okay. See, one of the advice and suggestion that I give to all the people who attend my workshop, who attend my session, or with whom I interact is, if you really want to grow in the project management, you must move away from being a checklist project manager. So when we talk about methodology, you definitely will have the checklist, but the processes, you must use your wisdom, your knowledge, that how and where you're going to use these processes. And PMI is going to check that component, okay, whether you understand the processes, you understand the application of that process or not. And that is why I told you in the beginning, this exam has actually become a sort of psychometric assessment, where PMI is going to check how comfortable you are in solving those complex situations. Okay, so there are two different groups where your processes will fall. First is, what is the process that you need to follow, or that is aligned with the organizing the work of the project or the project. Sometimes, let me give you an example to understand this, the work of the project. So there is something called as project scope, and there is something called as product scope. Okay. So project scope is what is to be done, product scope is how to be done. Suppose you have received a project, your company has received a project that they need to construct a gas station. Okay, so you need to construct a gas station, and when you look at the guidelines, one of the most important guideline is there must be some fire safety mechanism. There has to be fire extinguisher or some system installed in place. So that becomes a scope of the product. Okay. Now to have that product installed, or to have that feature enabled in your product, you need to do certain activities. That work that you're going to do will become your project scope. So to identify the work that you need to do for a project, you must define certain processes which will be your project management processes. And to identify what is to be delivered, to identify what are the specific features of the product, you must follow certain processes. Okay, those processes can be like you're doing a prototype. Okay. So for that prototype, there may be certain specific technical process which you need to follow, which may be outside this list of 47 processes. Okay. So there is a comment from Mike, memorize table 3.1. Yes, I'm going to show you that in some time. That is something that you must memorize. I'll show you that in few minutes from now. Okay. So understand the difference, and when you go for the project scope management, of course, we are not going to cover that in this webinar session. That is a part of the detailed PMP exam preparation workshop session, where we discuss about the product scope and project scope. So a process is made up of certain input. So that process will receive some information. That process is going to analyze and review that information using some tool and technique, and that process is giving you the output. Output of one process can be or may be an input to one or multiple or more than one processes. So now is the time to look at these processes here. So I will show you this table. Please let me know if you can see my desktop and you can see this PDF which I'm sharing right now. So I'm sharing the Pmbok guide. Can you just confirm if you're able to see my screen, Pmbok guide on my screen? Okay, great. So this is the table 3-1 which Mike was talking about, and it gives you a list of all the 47 processes and how they are mapped to the process groups and knowledge areas. So what you see here on the top, hold on, let me just show you that. Okay, what you see here on the top, this one are all your process groups, and what you see here from 4 onwards are your knowledge areas, and then these are the processes. I'm going to explain this in detail in a while, but these are the processes, and you need to memorize in the sense you must have a very good understanding of this table. I will not use the word memorize because I am absolutely against memorizing anything or everything. You must understand the logical flow. So we are going to spend a lot of time on this table here. So I'll go back to my screen, my presentation. So all these 47 processes, lot of these processes are interconnected. Output of one process will be input to one or more than one processes, and so on. Okay, I'll show you that mapping as well. For example, if you go to this process of I picked up any particular process here, you can see the process we are talking about in highlight right now is develop project charter. Develop project charter is receiving input from these documents and these activities, and the output of this process is being used into so many processes. It is going to your develop project management plan. It is also being used as an input in all these processes that you see on this side. Okay, so these processes are interconnected. They have some interdependency and interrelationship, and you must understand that. So people who think that memorization will help, just remember there are 47 processes, and each of the process has this data flow diagram. Okay, unless you have some supercomputer, super memory chip integrated in your mind, it will not be possible to create that map, and for that we must understand the logical flow of that. Okay, and that logical flow is something that we are going to talk about in a while from now. So moving to the next topic. Okay, let me check if everyone is clear with what we have discussed so far. Anyone has any question, please let me know. Okay, I will consider no news as a good news. So the next is your process group interaction. So we talked about the process groups. I call them as a IPEC. IPEC is your initiate, plan, execute, control, and close. So these are the 5 process groups, and these process groups interact with each other in this order. You will initiate the project. You'll initiate you'll have to follow the processes which are in the initiating process group. And if I go to this table, which is on page number 61 of Pmbok guide, I can see the table 3-1. Initiating process group has certain processes. Once you complete these processes, do all this required thing, then you will be able to start your planning process group. And the planning and execution may have some overlapping there. Of course, there is a lot of subjectivity involved depending on the nature of the work or the organization structure or the process that you follow. You will do that. And while the work is being done, you will have to use the processes which are in monitoring and controlling to ensure the work is as per plan, and also it is meeting the requirements and expectation of the stakeholder. And once you complete entire set of complete the deliverables are completed, then you will move on to the closing process and you will exit the phase. Important point, another point to understand here is these process groups, they are not the project life cycle. Okay, these process groups can be a part of your project management life cycle, which may be spread across the entire project or which may be limited to one phase of the project. Okay. For example, I'll get back to the screen. We talked about analysis. So here we are saying analysis is a phase. Now, depending on the complexity, depending on the duration, depending on the location, geographical location, this analysis may take a long time. I was watching this documentary on the Discovery Channel about how this Panama Canal was built and constructed. So it took probably 2 or 3 years only to analyze whether it can be done there or not. Okay, so in these kind of complex project, your analysis itself can be a project in its own, isn't it? So for that, you can actually define, or you can have your different process groups, or it can have a project management life cycle within it only. So in this case, in this example, what I gave you, what you do is you will have all these 5 process groups going on within the analysis. Then you may have the same process group going for design. You may have all this for build as well. But in a standard typical project, if you're in an IT company, you have a duration of, you have 3 month or 4 month long project, or very typical project, then you need not to have project management life cycle for each of the phase here, but you can define one single life cycle for the entire project life cycle. Okay, so these 4 phases, these process groups or different element of this process groups of this project management life cycle can be sequential, can be overlapping, or can be iterative as well. Clear? And I'll jump back to the PMP examination blueprint from here. So a lot of people have this question that which one is most critical, which one is most important here? Believe me, everything is important. Everything is very, very important in Pmbok. There is nothing of lower significance or lower importance. Okay. PMP examination, this 200, the distribution of the 200 questions will be like this for all the domains. 13% of the questions will be from initiation, 24 for planning, 30 for execution, 25 for monitoring and controlling, and 8% of the questions will be from closing, and they will be mixed randomly. Okay? It's not that you will get a question, so the first 13% questions will be from initiating, next 24% will be for planning. No, they will be mixed randomly, and you need to find out and figure out yourself that this question belong to that particular stage or process group or not. Somewhere this information may be useful, somewhere it may not be. Okay, I would suggest for the examination that if the question is such which does not demand you does not demand the identification of the process group, do not waste your time to figure out it belongs to which domain. Look at the situation, read it thoroughly, understand the situation, and take the answer, select the option which is most appropriate as per the PMI guidelines. So we're going to talk about the tips and tricks towards the end of the session. So stay on, hang on till the time for if you want to get answered of those questions. Okay. Now moving to the next part is these processes have their own structure. They have certain set inputs, tools and techniques, and certain outputs. PMI gives you a lot of flexibility and freedom. Okay? So the project manager and project team can tailor the process, customize the process, modify the process. Okay? They can merge two processes. They can merge or remove some of the processes. They can also eliminate some of the elements of the process as well. That is completely up to you as a project manager and your team. Okay. From the examination perspective, you will have to go through all those 47 processes. But when it comes to the real-time application, you need to build your own methodology. So you will use these 47 processes as a guiding document, and based on that, you're going to decide as a team whether certain processes are relevant or not. If not, don't include that in your methodology. Okay, you can club certain processes. For example, validate scope and quality control can be merged. Your create WBS and define activity process can be merged. Your qualitative and quantitative risk analysis can be merged. Okay, so these are just some of the examples that how you can do that in a real life. PMI allows you to do that. Okay, at this point of time, I'll just deviate from here for 2 minutes. I'm sure you all must have heard of Prince2 and Agile. Prince2 follow traditional portfolio approach, which Pmbok also follows. In Prince2, you have set number of processes which you must follow in as is format. Okay. In Pmbok guide, you have the liberty to pick and choose a process that you're going to follow in the real life. If you want to know more about the difference in PMI ECP, Prince2 and PMP, you can go to edureka website, and I did a webinar probably 3 weeks back that is named as Paths to PMP. It's a 1-hour webinar, not so long as long this one is. Go through that webinar, and this will give you a complete overview of, give you a complete clarity on what is the difference in ACP, Prince2 and PMP. If you have any difficulties accessing that webinar, please reach out to the support team or reach out to me or the sales team, and we will help you. And the next part is project management knowledge areas. So there are 10 knowledge areas, 10 distinctive knowledge areas. Your integration, scope, time, cost, quality, HR, communication, risk, procurement, and stakeholders. Same can be seen here as well in your Pmbok guide. So you have all these knowledge areas, and each of the knowledge area has certain processes. So depending on what stage of the project you are, you will have to carry out these processes from each of the respective knowledge area. Okay, so when you go for a 4-day or 35 hours training, you actually are taken through all these 10 knowledge areas. We do a deep dive into each and every process. We review each and every input, tools and techniques and outputs in that training here. Okay, so you must be familiar with this mapping part, and that's all about this chapter, this topic. And the next one is overview of the Pmbok guide. So that is where we do the 360-degree overview. So that's a slightly lengthy and slightly time-taking topic. So before that, do you have any question that you want to ask right now? So I am sharing Pmbok right now, and to get a complete view, I'm going to minimize my question window on a side. So in case if I miss your question, please bear with me. Another few minutes, I'm going to pop that chat question window back. I need more space to do that. So let's go in the beginning of this Pmbok section. This is how your Pmbok guide is when you download the soft copy of it. And when you come to this index, yeah, table of content, here you can see you have some introduction here, and then it talks about from chapter 1, 2 and 3 till chapter 1, 2 and 3. They talk about the project management processes, framework, and also the factors which can influence your project. That is your organizational framework, your organizational structure and all area. And also it talks about the competencies of the project manager, which is very important. So the knowledge area starts from chapter 4. That's why when you go to this table on page number 61, you must be wondering that, why it is starting from 4. Why not from 1? Because 1 is introduction, 2 is your organization influence in the project life cycle, 3 is your PM processes, and the knowledge area start from 4. Okay, and then they have all these 10 knowledge areas. I'm scrolling a bit fast because I need to go to the next section here. Okay, here, yes. Towards the end, you see this annex 1 which says standards for project management of a project, which is on page number 417. So when you go through the processes which are or all the sections before this page, it will all be knowledge area wise. You can see the way the chapters are organized. They are all knowledge area wise. They will pick up one knowledge area one by one, and they will talk about all the processes, falling into that knowledge area across different process group. But in Annex 1, standard for project management of a project, PMI has given this information how you can follow in the process group wise. I will show you that. I'll show you one of the chapter from here. Let me take you through the stakeholder, that is 391. If I go to this one of the knowledge area, here it tells me that what are the different processes I have in that knowledge area. Okay, so this is based on the knowledge area depending on the process group you're falling into. And if I go to the next annex, and here it talks about the organization of this processes with respect to the process group. So here you can see they are talking about when you are in the initiating process group, what all process you're going to follow. When you move to the planning process group, what all process you're going to follow. When you move to the executing process group, what all process you need to follow, and so on. So they have picked up these process groups here. So initiating process group, we can see in initiating process group there are only 2 processes. So when your project is passing through the initiating stage, you need to carry out these 2 processes coming from different knowledge areas. When your project move into the planning stage, then you need to follow these many processes. Okay, they are all coming from the different knowledge areas. You're coming from scope, time, cost, quality, HR, and so on. When you move to the executing process group, then you need to follow all these areas. So I'm sorry. It's for the to prepare for the PMP examination, go through everything. You must read entire Pmbok cover to cover at least once. Do not even think of going for PMP examination without reading this. Okay, and when we talk about the practical application, that what is to be done, in what order we should do in a real life scenario, then you should refer to this standards of project management for a project, okay, which is in 417. Because in a practical scenario, you may want to go process group wise. That first of all, let me identify what is it I need to do in the initiating process group. Then let me figure out what all I need to do in the planning process group. And along with that, depending on the subjectivity I mean, based on the subjectivity, whether it is a iterative life cycle you're following or the overlapping that you're following, you will decide what process to follow in the planning and executing in what order. Remember, PMI does not expect you to, or PMI has no guidelines that you must follow all the processes in a particular sequence or in fashion. Of course, there are some dependencies, hard dependencies among the processes. For example, you cannot start your project or you cannot move on to the your identify stakeholder or the planning process if you have not done this process. But when you come to this stage, this is up to you that in what order you want to follow these processes, or in what order you want to follow these processes. That is subjective. That is something that the project manager and the team will decide. Okay. So the important question it talks about, important question that it answers is, in what order we must follow it. Okay. So I hope I was able to clarify this. I hope I was able to shed some light on this. If you have any questions here, please ask, because this is a very, very important from the examination perspective. Does each process generate one deliverable? Okay, so Rory, to answer your question, I will again take you through a process first of all. Okay, I do not want to give an answer which will confuse you, but let me take you here. Let's look at this process. Okay, develop project charter. Okay. So we do not use this word deliverable for the process, but we say output. Each of the process is going to give you some output. That output may be in the form of a project deliverable, or that output may be just require some updates in some of the documents. Okay. When you go to the execution, when you look at some of the processes in the execution, then definitely there would be a deliverable here. But when you go to some of the monitoring controlling processes, when you go to some of the planning processes, all you're going to get is probably a document or maybe an update to the document. Okay. So when you plan for the project, when you identify the scope and prepare your work breakdown structure, you will identify what are the deliverables of the project. You will identify what are the internal deliverables and what are the external deliverables of the project. Okay. And based on that, you can see whether this process is giving you any of this internal or external deliverable or not. But each of the process will definitely give you some output. Does it answer your question, Rory? Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll move to next, and I'll go to page number 61. And what we are going to do is to do a complete and a quick 360-degree overview of our Pmbok guide. I am going to follow the approach which will be process group wise. So we will review the processes which are there in the initiating process group, and then we will review the processes which are in planning and then executing and so on. And I'll tell you where these processes will have to be in some sort of sequential manner, where the process will have to be some overlapping or maybe in a repetitive fashion. Okay. So starting with initiating process group, and the very first in the project has to be develop project charter. So develop project charter is a process which is going to give you a very important deliverable, that is project charter. And project charter is a document which authorizes a project manager to use the resources of the organization to carry out the project work, okay, or to do the project. Project charter is signed by a project sponsor, approved by the project sponsor. Okay. Or you can say project charter is released by the project sponsor. There may be a question like this in the PMP examination, that who has authority to release a project charter, and it is always and always project sponsor. Project manager is identified during the charter process. In the project charter, name of the project manager will be documented, that this particular person will be the manager, but it will always be approved by the sponsor. And this this charter, how it gets approved and signed off by the sponsor is, there has to be some criteria, some justification. So your company may want to look at some of the business cases. They may want to look at some cost benefit analysis, that is it beneficial, is it in the interest of the organization to do this project. There would be has to be some justification for that, and most importantly, whether it complies with the organization guidelines and policies or not. So your management board will review all these things, and then they are going to give a go ahead for the project, and then project sponsor is going to release the project charter. And after the project charter is released and signed off by the sponsor, now the project manager will become the captain of the ship. So in other words, project charter can be considered as an agreement between the senior management of the organization and also the project team or the project manager. And another important point here is, project charter must never be shared with the customer. Okay? It is an internal document, and it must be available only to the identified or selected people, because it may carry some of the very confidential information about the project as well. Okay? Not necessary that everyone in the project team must have an access to that. So what I do is, I actually ask people to prepare a charter, a full-fledged charter, and I also ask my team to prepare a mini charter. So mini charter is something which will talk only about the objective of the project, or maybe the boundaries of the project, which team must be aware of. And the project charter, the main project charter, will be confidential document, and only few people will have access to that. Okay. Once the charter is released, then we move to the next process, which is your identify stakeholder. Let me increase the font size so everyone can read it comfortably. The next process, immediate process that you must do before you do anything in the project, is your identify stakeholder. So identify stakeholder is the process where project team or whoever are the key people who are involved in the initial stage of the project will sit down and find out who are the stakeholders in the project. Okay? Who are the people who can influence the project, who can impact the outcome of the project, who are the people who may or who will get impacted by the outcome of the project. Make a comprehensive list of all the stakeholders. And remember, project charter is a process which you do only once. Develop project charter will be carried out only once in the entire project. Okay? But identify stakeholder is a process which may have to be repeated, which may get repeated during the course of the project, because as you move ahead in the project, some people will get added, some people will move, some people will join. You remember that progressive elaboration? Progressive elaboration, it means as you move ahead, you will get the granular details about the project. And as granular you go, as detailed you go, you may identify, oh, I'm getting into this level. I need some support from that particular team. I need some support from that person. Or maybe this is the area where I can actually get some guidance from one of the our customer only. So this is something that you must review on a frequently basis and update and information as and when needed. Okay. After you have identified the stakeholders, then is the time you are good to start with your planning processes. Now, from this point onwards, you will have to understand the difference between the project integration management and all other processes. Okay. So project integration management covers, is made up of all the high level processes. High level process means, when you talk about project scope management, you can see it has all the processes which are related only to the scope of the project. When we talk about the project time management, it covers all the processes which are from the taking care of the time management area, time related to the schedule. When you talk about the cost management, it has all those processes which will be helpful to manage the cost of it. But when we go to our integration, it does not talk about any specific element of the project, but it talks about project as a whole. It talks about the overall project end to end. Okay, so develop project management plan is a high level process which is a part of your project integration management. And remember, project manager will be directly responsible for all the high level processes in project integration management. So develop project management plan is a process where we are going to develop our master project management plan, and one of the key input, I will take you to this process here. Let me just go to that process because it's important for you to see the process. Okay, when you come to your 4.2, it has to go further. Okay, so this is the process map here. Your input, tools and techniques, and output. So develop project management plan takes project charter as an input, output from other processes along with enterprise environmental factor and OPA. Now this output from other processes is very, very crucial and very important here. I will go back to page number 61. So what are the processes it is talking about? Okay, so there is a question. I don't know from where I got this question. Are the 10 knowledge areas to be followed in a linear fashion? Not exactly. Project integration definitely stands out, and scope, time, cost, quality, HR, communication, you will have to use your own discretion. But if I have to answer this question, and the logical way of looking at this is, before I plan any of the element of the project, I must know what is the scope. Okay, and when they are going to be done and what will be the cost. Because when you look at this triple constraint, when you look at the constraint of this project, let me go here and draw something here with my very poor drawing skills. When we talk about this triple constraints of the project, okay, when you talk about this, one side you will have your scope, one side you will have your time, and one side you will have your cost or budget, and in the center you will have quality. This is a balanced triple constraint. Now as a project manager, your responsibility is to ensure that you're always getting a perfect triangle. It means all the competing factors or the constraints of this project are aligned properly. Any change or variation in the scope is going to impact your time. Any variation in your time may impact your scope, and it may impact your cost, it may impact your quality as well. Any variation in the cost will definitely impact your scope or maybe time as well. Okay, and quality also. So what you need to do is, these three knowledge areas specifically, you need to actually use your discretion, and you need to do this in a fashion where when you are defining the scope, when you are creating the WBS, if you feel that the scope part is probably overstretched or maybe too short, then you need to fine tune it. When you fine tune it, your time and your cost will get impacted. At the same time, your quality also can get impacted. You may require different set of people or maybe additional workforce for that. You may have to interact with a different set of people. So you may have to relook at your communication plan. It may increase or decrease the risk in the project. So you need to balance it out. So I would not say that you have to follow it in a particular fashion, but the logic says, first of all, you need to have clarity on the scope. And as you are developing the scope, parallelly you will work on your schedule, parallelly you work on the cost, because all these elements are interlinked. If I go back to the slide which I had shown you earlier, this one, yeah, this one. You can see all these areas are dependent, are highly dependent to or linked to each other. Okay, so I leave that on you. You decide in what order you need to do. PMI does not have any guideline. PMI does not say that all the processes must be followed in a particular fashion. So, develop project management plan is a high-level process which uses one of the input as output from other processes. Now, what are those outputs? So that is, those outputs are output from your create WBS process, output from your develop schedule process, output from your determine budget process, okay, output from your plan quality management. So when you go to this process, let me just take you through the process map again. That was probably 72. If you look at this process map here, develop project management plan, you can see it is using output from communication plan, cost, HR, procurement, process improvement, quality management, requirement management. So all these inputs will be consolidated, integrated, and then you will come up with your project management plan, which can also be called as your master project management plan. Okay. Once that plan is ready, then you can move to the next phase. But let's not move to the next process group execution. Let's review all the processes that you need to follow to get all these information. Okay. So let me go back to page 61 here. First, I would suggest that you start from the scope management and project scope management, and parallelly you can start developing your time management and cost management as well. Now, if you pay attention to these processes, subsidiary, I will call them as a subsidiary processes. Okay. If you look at the first process of project scope management, first process of project time management, first process of plan cost management, and so on, you can see the name is plan scope management, plan cost, plan time, plan schedule, and all. So these are the processes where you will define your approach towards it. Okay, like plan scope management, you will document what all process or what steps you will have to take to identify and finalize the scope. Who will do that? You will also document your roles and responsibility. Okay, so once your approach is defined, then you will collect the requirement following the process, following the step which we already identified in the plan scope management, and based on that you will come up with a preliminary scope statement or a scope statement which will be the output of your defined scope. So scope statement is a document which you need to share with your customer. It will give you a description of the product scope, that what is it that you're going to deliver, and you will also have to document that what is it that you're not going to deliver. For example, the objective is to develop an application. For example, let's say an application. Okay. So application is the deliverable, final deliverable, but you can also document that the training will not be a part of this project. Customer need to pay separately for this training. So the advantage of this is it is going to make things crystal clear whether this will be a part of your deliverable or not. Okay. So this must be agreed by all the key stakeholder, by the stakeholder, and by the project team. Okay, so there is a question from Tembilan. Oh, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. Please excuse me for that. With change management, change being part of the project management. Okay, Temba, thank you. When change being part of project management, when do you develop a change management plan? Change management plan, there is no specific process defined for the change management or to develop your change management plan, but it is considered as a part of your project management plan. So you will have to develop that. You will have to develop that separately. But change management, sometimes you can actually use it as it is as well. So suppose your organization has a policy or a guideline for the change management, which you will have to use without making any changes or any specific to that. Okay, so when do you do that? Before you finalize your project management plan, you must do that. Okay, Mike, we will come to that part. I have a separate slide to make you understand that. Okay, I will park that question for a later stage, but when we come to that point, monitoring controlling, I will definitely take you through that. And I have a specific slide for that also. I'll just give you the glimpse of that. Okay, so this is where I define that why we need to have separate processes. Okay, and we'll move on to the next one. That is your scope. So once you have the scope statement, then you will prepare your work breakdown structure where you do the decomposition of your high level deliverable into smaller pieces. Parallelly, when you completed your scope management plan, at the same time, you should complete your plan schedule management as well, where you're going to define your approach, your policy, your procedure, your guidelines, and roles and responsibility for the schedule management, like how the schedule will be defined, what tools you're going to use to define the schedule, what will be the unit of duration, whether it is going to be calculated or estimated in hours or in minutes or in days or in months or in weeks. Then you start elaborating this create WBA, this work breakdown structure. So remember, this process gave you work breakdown structure, and the 6.2 define activity is the next step of that. So whatever work breakdown structure you have created, now you need to define activities for that, and next step will be sequence that activity, estimate how many resources you need for that activity, find out how much time you need for that, and then you develop your schedule here. So develop schedule is something that is going to, we are going to use one very important activity there, that is critical path analysis. So I'm going to cover critical path, towards the later part of the session. When is the scope interrogation done? There's a question from Themba again. Scope interrogation, I'm sorry, I'm not very clear with the scope interrogation. Do you mean to say scope check or scope control? Control scope? So I understand by this word interrogation as when you're going to check whether you're as per plan or there is no scope creep. That we will do during control scope. Okay. So after you have done your critical path analysis and you have done all your if and when, if what scenario, what if scenario analysis, when you have done all the worst case and best case scenario analysis, you will come up with your schedule. So output of your create WBS is going to give you the scope baseline. Output of develop schedule is going to give you your schedule baseline. Similar way, okay, Themba, there is a question point from Themba again. Scope check to be sure what to deliver. Okay, that we are going to do in monitor and control when we come to the control scope. So develop schedule will give you your scope schedule baseline and plan cost management. So normally all these processes, the plan scope management 5.1, 6.1, 7.1, 8.1, you will actually have to develop them in parallel. You will not wait for your scope to be completed so that you can start on the time. No, your approach, your guidelines, your tools, processes will be defined in the early stage. So 5.1, 6.1, 7.1, 8.1, 9.1, all these first process of the knowledge area will be running concurrently. Okay. So in plan cost management, you would have documented your approach, that what is the currency you're going to use, what is the currency conversion mechanism you need to use, what tools you're going to use for the cost estimation. And based on this approach that you define, based on the roles and responsibility given to these people, that those team members will start estimating the cost. Now, estimating cost has a significant dependency on your defined scope and your WBS, and also in your activity resource requirement and activity duration. Because depending on the time, depending on at what point of time you're using certain resources, the cost may increase, isn't it? Depending on the length of the duration or length of the time for which you need the resources or you need to carry out the work, your cost will be impacted. So you will have to strike a balance here. Always remember this triangle. Keep this in your mind that whatever you do in your scope may impact your time and cost and quality. Whatever you do in cost may impact your scope and time, and other way around. So you have to strike a balance. Keep doing this work in a sync so that you get the best results. Okay. And once you have estimated cost for each and every activity, then you go to determine the budget. So this is a place where we are going to integrate the cost. We are going to sum up the cost, your whatever work breakdown structure or activities we had for which we estimated the cost. We are going to roll it up. We are going to sum it up so we can see our overall project cost, and then we are going to add up something for the reserve or something for the contingency, which can be utilized during any unplanned event, which is your risk, and you will top that up with your reserve, and then we are going to submit the final budget, and this process, determined budget, is going to give us our cost baseline. Okay. Parallelly, you will have to develop your quality management plan. So quality is something that is, okay, let me ask you a question and type in your answer in the chat window. Who defines the quality? Who defines the quality in a project? Fantastic. I can see a lot of answers coming up, and some of the people have got it right. It is the customer. It is always the customer who defines the quality of the project, who will give you the quality goals. For example, I'll give you a very generic example. You go to a restaurant and you order your favorite dish. Let's say soup. You order soup in a restaurant. Okay. Organization, and you have certain expectation that I want soup to be in a particular fashion. I want this soup to be spicy. I want this soup to be hot, and you must serve some, some butter or maybe some soup stick along with it. Okay. So there are some explicit quality objective which are given by the customer. So when you place your order, you tell the waiter that I want the soup to be spicy and I want some breadcrumbs in that. You will never ever tell him that please serve the soup only in the soup bowl, because he can bring you the soup in the beer mug as well. So you gave your requirement, which will be called as a, yes, that is specification, Raghu, that is a specification, exactly. So you will give your explicit requirement or explicit specification. Waiter will take the order inside and the entire team will start working on that. Okay. There are some implicit requirement, implicit quality goals that your restaurant, whichever restaurant you are into, they say that, okay, we follow some stringent policies for the hygiene factor. That each of the tomato which is bought for the soup or vegetables must be washed properly and must be checked by the quality team whether that is washed and that is of good quality or not. And while preparing the soup, the chef has to follow certain processes. Chef has to follow certain steps or process to ensure that it comes as per the requirement. Okay. And when do you appoint the CCB? I'll come to that, Thamba. I'll come to that. And one of the requirement, let's say one of the requirement that you gave is, I do not want soup to be thin. I want a thick soup. So this is a specification that you have given. Chef, this information was passed into the inside team and they followed all these processes and the steps and guidelines, and chef prepared the soup. Soup comes to you, and when you take the first sip of the soup, you again scream or shout or tell the manager that this soup is not good. This soup is not good. It means why it is not good? Because you had asked this soup to be spicy and the soup is not spicy. It means one of the requirement that the customer gave was not met. So that requirement will actually become the quality goal for the project team. You asked, you said, or you specified that I want the soup to be thick, but the soup that comes to you is actually thin. It's a watery kind of soup. It again did not fulfill your requirement. So the project team missed another goal. That's a quality. Non-fulfillment of the specification or the requirements is actually the missing a quality goal. So based on the requirement of the customer, you will define certain parameters which will define the quality of the project and quality of the deliverable. Some of the quality goals objective can be implicit and some of them will be explicit. Okay, and during the planning stage only, you will, when you make your change control plan or change management plan, that is the time you will define your change control board. Okay. So is missing the quality a scope creep? No, Themba. Missing the quality cannot be called as a scope creep. Okay. Scope creep is something that you are asked to prepare a tomato soup, okay, within certain specifications, and you actually added something else to it. So scope creep is when the customer orders that, okay, I want a soup. And the waiter says, okay, sir, it will be delivered to you in 10 minutes time or 15 minutes time. And at the 12th minute, you call the waiter again and then you tell him, hey, I forgot to mention, please ensure there are breadcrumbs into that and it is coming in time. So that's a creep which is happening from the customer side. And that is also a change. Okay? To ensure that this change is looked upon and considered and reviewed and incorporated into the project, the waiter must tell the customer, sir, we are already preparing the soup and the soup is almost ready. If you want any addition to that, you will have to extend the timeline by 5 minutes. We need some extra time to do that. Okay. So what we'll do is, in the plan quality management, we are going to define the quality objective. We will define what are the specifications that we need to fulfill, what are the parameters we need to fulfill, and what are the standards we need to adhere to, and who will do that, roles and responsibility. Parallelly, you need to work on your human resource management plan, that how many resources you need, with what skill set you need, okay, at what point of time you need. Depending on the role, depending on their cost, you will decide how many people you need. That you will decide here in activity resource requirement. Okay. And here you are going to prepare your organization structure. What will be the hierarchy, project team hierarchy? Who will report to whom? What are the different roles you are going to have in the project? What are the KRA for that? What is the responsibility? Okay. Once you have that, you will have your human HR management plan. Parallelly, you need to work on your communications management plan. That all the stakeholders that we identified in 13.1, what are their expectations? How we are going to meet that expectations, that we will definitely discuss it in 12.1, but your 10.1 and 12.1 will go hand in hand. We cannot look at these two processes in isolation. Okay, so all the stakeholder will have some expectations. We will identify what their role is, what their expectations are, and based on that, we will define how we are going to fulfill their expectation. And the only way we can fulfill their expectation is by providing them the right information at the right time in a right format, to ensure that they are always engaged and their requirements are being fulfilled. So we will plan how we are going to do the communication, who will do that, what will be the frequency, what will be the scope of that. That means what are dashboards, what are pointers you're going to include in your reports. Okay. What tool you're going to use, what medium you're going to use. Is it going to be through email? Is it going to be through fax? Or is it going to be uploaded on the SharePoint site and people will have access to that? And frequency, is it going to be on daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis? Okay, so you will prepare everything, document in your communication management plan. And there is a question again from Themba. So what happened if the client asks you to finish the project earlier than the plan? And okay, so Themba, this again question we are going to take up in our monitoring and control, when we do the execution and monitor control. Okay, is that fine? I'll park this question right now for the time we reach to monitoring and controlling. Okay. Along with this communication, parallelly, we also need to work on our risk management. So risk is quite complex and quite crucial. So you need to pay a lot of attention while defining your risk management policies. This will include what are the guidelines, or what will define that you have a risk in the project. So you can document here that, okay, 5% or more than 5% cost variation will be considered as a risk. It can be 5%, it can be 2%, it can be 1%. Sometimes some of the delay is always expected when you have any external dependence in the project. So the guideline can be like, okay, 1 to 2 days of variation or delay, up to 2 days of delay will not be considered as a risk, but beyond 2 days, 2 days to 3 days will be a low risk, 3 to 5 days will be a mid risk, and more than 5 days will be a high risk category. And then what can be the different source of it? In case of any risk, who is going to act upon that? Who is going to take any action? What is the frequency? Because risk is something which is quite volatile, and sometimes it can be intangible also. And the risk, the event, the impact of the event may change. What is a risk today may not remain a risk tomorrow. What is not a risk today may become a risk tomorrow. Okay, so for that it is important that you keep on reviewing it, revisiting the risk from time to time. So here you will also define the frequency at which you're going to do the risk, and then you will identify the risk. You'll find out what are the different risks there, and then you do the quality and quantitative analysis, where you do your probability and impact analysis, and you'll also find out what is a monetary value associated with that. You will document all this information in a document called risk register, and based on all this analysis and the value you're getting, you will define your risk response plan. So risk response plan is something that it's basically a strategy that you're going to adopt. So there are 4 different options available to you to respond to a risk. You can avoid it, to respond to a negative risk. Okay, because risk can be negative or positive. If it is a negative risk, it is considered as a threat. If it is a positive risk, it is considered as an opportunity. So you will decide whether you want to avoid, you want to accept, you want to transfer, or you want to mitigate in case of a threat. In case of a positive risk or an opportunity, you will have to document a strategy for each of the risks, whether you're going to accept it, transfer it, enhance it, or share it. Okay. We cannot go to the further detail than this. In case if you need any additional information on this, you can touch base with me on the offline, and I'll be glad to answer your queries there. Okay. We have 2 more processes, knowledge areas here, that is plan procurement. In case if you need to buy something from outside, if you need to procure something from a vendor, a third party, then you need to define the guidelines here. Who will do that? What type of contract we are going to follow? So type of contract here is a very important topic in plan procurement management, and you may get at least 2 questions from this area only. So what type of contract? Is it a cost basis? Is it on the time and cost, and it is basically on, time and material? Is it a cost reimbursement, or what type of contract it is? Who will do that? What is the justification for that? What is the rationale behind going to a third party vendor? Okay. You will document everything in your procurement management plan, and parallelly, or actually, before you do anything, you need to prepare your stakeholder management plan. So stakeholder management plan is okay, Raghu is asking if I can give an example of a positive risk. Yes, I will definitely give you that since you asked for it. Let me finish this stakeholder management plan, and then I'll come to that. Whatever or whoever was identified during this process, identify stakeholder, we need to find out how we are going to manage the expectations of that stakeholder. Okay, so we will do our analysis here in power versus interest grid analysis, and based on that we can define here that, okay, all these people who are very high in power, who are very high in interest, okay, so these are the people who need to be managed proactively. So the strategy for that will be that project manager must engage with that person who is very high in power on a weekly basis, and must provide a proactive information to that stakeholder. Okay, so when we define the strategy that, okay, let me give you an example. Client manager. So client manager is one of the important stakeholder in your project. Client manager is high in power. He has very high power and authority in the project, and his interest is also very high in this project. So the strategy to manage this expectation is that project manager is going to manage the client manager and provide proactive information. To execute this strategy, we will take help of our communication management plan. When communication management plan, we will say that, okay, project manager will be meeting face to face with the client manager on a weekly basis. And these are the reports that he's going to share with the client manager. And you can document, you can list down the different kind of dashboard or the report that you're going to share them. And what will be the scope of the dashboard. So that is how your stakeholder management plan and communication management plan work hand in hand. Okay. And Themba is asking, is the JPPS? Can you please elaborate what is JPPS? Themba, I am not very clear with JPPS. So till the time you type in, let me answer Raghu's question. He's asking, what is the example of a positive risk? For example, attrition is a key problem, key challenge almost everyone faces at some point or any point of time. Let's say Nishant is working in your team, and Nishant is a very niche resource and very critical resource. And from your gut feeling, from your experience, based on your interaction with the Nishant, you somehow feel that Nishant may resign. Okay? Now this is an event. If that happens, it can deviate the project. So you identify that as a threat. Okay? You start working on the project. Unfortunately, Nishant resigns. And you get a backfill. Now the backfill means you get a replacement resource. Now the new resource which has come, when he joins the team and come on board, he start working, you realize that this resource is much better than Nishant, smarter than Nishant, faster than Nishant. And he can finish the work faster than Nishant used to take. So earlier, what was being perceived as a threat or a negative risk has now become a positive risk or an opportunity. Okay, so you will immediately execute or draft some strategy that how you're going to leverage on this. Another example of a positive risk could be price going down. Let's say you are working on a project which uses cement as one of the raw material construction. So due to all the economic situation, you assume when you do the analysis, you realize that the cost of the cement at which you have done all the estimation, that cost may go down. If that cost go down, you need to invest lesser amount of money. So that is a positive risk or an opportunity. Okay. Remember, all the positive risks are opportunities and all the negative risks are threat. Okay, so Themba has come up with this one, joint project preparatory session. See, joint project preparatory session is something that is highly subjective. Okay, and you will normally in the project preparatory session, you will have to define as a project manager in a real life scenario that what exactly is the scope of this session. In PMP, there is nothing called as joint project preparatory session. It is completely subjective. Okay. How you're going to manage the expectation? PMI is giving you the guidance that you prepare your stakeholder register, note down the expectation of each of the stakeholder, prepare a communication plan. Now, these are the guidelines. Now you have formed a team for that joint project preparatory session. So that is absolutely fine. There is nothing wrong in that. But PMI is not asking you to prepare that team or having that session. That is up to you. So before we move to the executing process group processes there and remaining process groups, I want to take you back to this presentation. So this is an area. This is a slide which I want you to understand. This must get imprinted in your mind. So this is Deming cycle. I'm sure all of you must have seen this at some point of time somewhere. Plan, do, check, act. And change, when you check and you act, change accordingly in case if it is not as per plan. So what it is asking you to do is plan whatever you have to do. Once you have planned, then you do whatever has been planned. When you do this work, you will have the work results or the deliverables. You check whether those deliverables or the work result is as per plan or not. And once you have the findings, you act on that. If it is exactly as per plan, fulfilling the requirement and expectation, you go ahead and close that deliverable. If not, you find out, you dig deeper into that, you do root cause analysis, you find out the reason for the deviation and take appropriate action. You change, you bring in some change if needed. When you change, you update your plan and you redo the work. And we follow exactly the same process, same cycle here in our Pmbok as well. So we did our planning process, we did all the planning. Now we are getting into execution. As we execute, we will have the work results, which we are going to check in our monitor and control project work. We will do the check, and if everything is fine, it will move to the closed project. It will be closed, the deliverable will be closed. If not, we will find out why there is a deviation, why it is not as per plan, and we will make the change as appropriate. Okay, so direct and manage project work is a process where we carry out all the work that we had, all the activities that we had planned here. Okay. So what we did here is we planned each and every element, and we got this output of these processes. These output were taken into developed project management plan, where we prepared our consolidated project management plan, and once the plan was ready, we started working on it. As we work on it, we will have the work results or deliverables, and those work results or deliverables we will take to monitor and control project work. Okay, so executing the processes that we are going to review now, we will do actually both executing and monitoring and controlling in parallel. Okay. When we do our work, so while the work is being done, we need to take care of certain things. Okay. So let us look at the processes which are in the executing group. Perform quality assurance. So this is a very important and very interesting point to understand. In quality management, we have okay, so Themba has a question. Who signs off the plan and when is this done? Plan must be signed off by all the key stakeholders. Okay, so when we talk about the scope baseline, which is an output of your Create WBS, it must be signed by and agreed by your customer, your project manager and sponsor and all the key stakeholders. That everyone agreed that, this is what we are going to deliver. Your same way, your schedule baseline and your cost baseline. Quality management plan, you may or you may not to discuss with your customer. HR management plan, you need not to discuss with your customer. Communication management plan, of course, your customer may not need to approve it, other than some of the reporting requirement where customer may be very specific that, okay, I want to see a dashboard every week. I want to see a dashboard every fortnightly. Risk management is something that you will decide whether you want to share with your customer or not. But this master project management plan must be signed off by all. And when this should be done? Of course, at the end of the planning. When you have completed your planning, then you're going to do that. There is no timeline defined for it that, okay, the total project, 50% of that must go towards the project management plan. And that is the time when you have to do that. No, that is subjective. You will define. When the entire planning is done, you will get the sign off from all the relevant stakeholders. Okay. And then you move on to direct and manage project work. And there are certain things that you need to take care of while you are doing the work. And one of the most important of those activities is perform quality assurance. So let us understand the quality part. So there are three processes in quality: plan quality, perform quality assurance, and control quality. Plan quality is where you will define what is the quality goal, what are the requirements, explicit requirement of the customer, what are the implicit requirement of the organization. Based on that, you will identify certain parameters on which you're going to check the quality of the project and the deliverables. And you will also identify the steps or the process which you need to follow to get the deliverable, and you will also check how capable or how stable your processes are. Okay, so what happens is, I will get back to this slide. Your customer, let's say this, I'll get back to the same example. You went to a restaurant and you ordered for a soup, and you gave the explicit requirement that I want the soup to be spicy and I want the soup to be thick. Based on that, the restaurant manager or the chef made a plan what they're going to do, and he started following it. So he said, I'm going to boil these tomatoes and vegetables for 20 minutes. Okay, so before the plan was made finalized, first of all, the chef will have to decide whether the process that we have currently is capable of giving the deliverable within these guidelines or parameters or not. From his experience, the chef will say, if we boil tomato and vegetables for 20 minutes, we may get a very thin and watery soup. So we need a process improvement. So during the planning stage only, he will identify that what improvement he need to make in the plan. And that will be linked back to your duration. That again will go to your duration. So he reduces the boiling time from 20 minutes to 15 minutes as a part of the process improvement plan, and which is going to impact or reduce your overall activity duration as well. Okay. You made the plan changes, and the plan said that you have to boil it for 15 minutes. Now the execution starts. Chef starts preparing it. So while the soup is being prepared, okay, one of another element that he identified is that soup must be boiled at 100 for 15 minutes at 120 degrees centigrade. Okay, so while the soup is being boiled, chef is checking from time to time whether it is being boiled at the correct time or not, at the correct temperature or not. Okay, whether it is being boiled correctly or not. Okay, whether it is filled with the adequate amount of water or not. So that is something where he is checking whether the process is being followed or not. So that activity is called as audit. And the key activity that you do in perform quality assurance is a audit. And remember, audit is always and always done on the process. Okay. Once that process is followed and you did your execution, you will have work results or deliverables. Okay. When you do this work, you will have the results or deliverable, and that result you will take to your check, where you do the monitoring control. So check is something which is again, first the team who is working on that, or let's say the chef who is preparing it, before it goes to anyone else, chef will taste the soup and he'll say, perfect, yummy, delicious. It is exactly as per the requirements given to me. Okay. So he says the thickness is, the spiciness is fine. Everything is fine. But I feel that it is slightly watery. It is not thin. It is not thick. So he identified, he checked that, he compared the results with what was the plan. And then he realized that it is not as per plan, not meeting the expectation. Then he will get back to his so after the work result is done, deliverable, he will do this checking in the control quality. Control quality, he will do the inspection. And inspection is always and always done on finished or completed deliverable. Remember, audit, which is done in perform quality assurance, is always done on process, and control quality, where you do inspection, is always done on finished or completed deliverable. So when this chef did the control quality, or when he did the inspection, he realized that it is not as per the requirement. And then he need to do a process analysis, which will be again be a part of your perform quality assurance. So process analysis, he will check whether the process is giving, is there any deviation in the process or not? Is the process stable or not? And based on the finding of the process analysis, the chef may come and say, okay, we need to make some changes to the process. And that change, once the plan is finalized, once all the baselines were chosen, then no one in the project team or any other stakeholder has any authority to make any changes to the project elements without following the process of change. So chef will immediately do the process analysis, come up with a finding, and he says, okay, we need to reduce the time that we are using to boil the tomato and vegetables. And he gave a recommendation to boil it for 10 minutes at 100 degrees Celsius. So that will go in a form of a change request, and that change request will come to the perform integrated change control process, where it will be reviewed by the change control board. So change control board is formed during your planning stage. As you must have seen that one of the input to the developed project management plan was change management plan. So change control board is made up of key stakeholders. They will review the results. They will look at the nature of the change, how crucial and how important it is, and based on that they will decide whether the change should be approved or not. In this situation, change request will go to the change control board, and in perform integrated change control process, CCB will look into the findings and they will say, okay, approved. So it will be updated into the plan, and that's why you see a dotted line here from change it is going to plan. It is updated, and the chef will recook the food. He will again prepare the soup. And this change will also be documented so that when you plan the next project, you consider these findings and you make your plan accordingly, so you don't have to go through the cycle of change again. Next time he is doing that, he will check the soup, he will recook the soup, he will taste it, and now when he is checking, he says it is exactly as per the requirement, there is no deviation, it is absolutely fulfilling the requirement. And then it will be considered as the accepted deliverable, and it will go to the close. Okay. So talking about this quality, okay, I'll come to validate scope again later on. So this is about your perform quality assurance. At the same time, you need to do, your processes coming from the HR management, acquire project team, develop project team, and manage project team. This is something that you will keep on doing in parallel. Once you identified in the planning stage that what kind of roles you need for the project, what kind of responsibilities, what should be the key area of those resources and stakeholders that you have, then as and when needed, you will acquire the team, you will get the people on board, and you will do this develop project team process. Develop project team is like, setting the expectation, doing the ice breaking, and all this training, need assessment, and imparting the training and all. And you'll also have to manage the team. Manage the team is where you look at your work results, your deliverable, you look at how each and everyone is performing, how they are doing their work, whether it is as per plan or not, are they playing their role or not. So you'll have a discussion with the team member, you'll look at their need, their motivation, you will have to use your leadership qualities, your competencies of ideal project manager, communicate with the people, understand how they feel about the project. And when you are doing this work, you will have to manage communication. Let's say in communication management plan, you agreed that you are going to publish a report every week, or let's say on a daily basis. So as and when you make progress, you're doing work, every day you have to do the communication also, so you can ensure that all the expectations of the stakeholders are being managed. Okay. At the same time, if there was any procurement requirement, you may have to carry out the procurement at the agreed time. You will be carrying out this procurement at the time that you defined here in your schedule. Okay. You will also do your managed stakeholder engagement. So when you are providing the communication, you will also ensure that this communication is helping you to fulfill the expectations of all the stakeholders. Okay. You will ensure that all the stakeholders are engaged. You must have seen and noticed that, I am from time to time, I'm asking questions to you. I'm asking you to give some answers. I'm asking for your feedback. So I am ensuring, by this I'm ensuring that all of you are engaged. Exactly the same thing you also need to do in your project. Okay. So when you do all this, they are all going to give you the work results. And those work results will be checked here in your monitor and control project work. Okay. Now, let me take you through this slide, which is quite interesting slide here. Okay. How these processes, all the processes, I'm sorry, I'm going to, minimize the question window. So in case if you have any questions, okay, I can see one question from Themba. Are those stage gates? When you make your plan, you will decide that, what are stage gates you're going to have, or what are toll points you're going to have. Okay. Or at what stage you're going to review that. You can consider that as a stage gate as well. You can consider that as a checkpoint or toll gate as well. But it is all a part of your methodology. Are you doing it on a frequently basis? Are you doing it at end of each completion of each deliverable? That is, you have to decide. And you can call it as a stage gate. You can call it as a checkpoint. You can call it as a toll gate as well. Okay. So I'm going to minimize this question window. Let me take you through this slide for another 3 to 4 minutes, and then I'll see if you have any questions there. So this is a logical sequence at a very, very high level. We developed our project charter. Outcome of this process was project charter. And once the charter was ready, we prepared our project plan in developed project management plan process, and the outcome of this was project plan. Then based on this plan, we started doing the work. When we do the work, we will have two important information coming from that, or output, sorry, not information, two important outputs coming from that process. That is your deliverable and work performance data. Okay. That work performance data and deliverable will be taken to the control processes of these respective subsidiary knowledge areas. Okay. How? Let me take you there. So you can see in monitoring and controlling process groups, there are processes 5.5, 5.6, validate scope, control schedule, control cost, control quality. Okay. I hope you remember I told you project integration management has the processes which are not related to any specific element of the project, but they cover the entire or the overall aspect of the project. But when we talk about project scope management, it has processes which will give you information associated with the scope of the project. Time management will have the schedule related processes. Cost management will have the cost related process. So that information we need to take to this respective area. For example, let me go to the edit mode. For example, when you did this work, you got this deliverable. That means some work completed, and you also got work performance data. So when you read these processes, you will get to know about all these acronyms and abbreviations. So WPD is called as work performance data. Let me increase the size here so you can see this clearly. Now work performance data is a raw data, and that raw data is so you completed a deliverable, and this deliverable took, let's say, 7 days. It took 7 days time, and you spent close to $200 on that. Okay. So this is the raw data without any additional information. Now from this 7 days and 200, these two information, we will find out 7 days, it is related to duration. We will take this information to our control schedule process. In control schedule process, we will do a comparison, or we will do a variance analysis. We will find out that this deliverable that we have completed, how much time it was supposed to take. Then we are going to look at our plan. Plan says this work should have taken 5 days time. So when we do the compare variance analysis, we know there is a negative variance of 2 days, and that negative variance of 2 days will now be called as work performance information. And the work performance information will say there is a negative variance of 2 days. Okay. So work performance data is your raw data, and work performance information is your analyzed analyzed data associated with that deliverable. Similar way, when we take this information $200 to our control cost process, okay, let me write it next to the control schedule so it doesn't confuse you. When we talk about this process here, cost here $200, and we look at our variance analysis and control cost, we realize that we were supposed to spend only $175 on this work, but we ended up spending $200. So there is a negative variance, which will be called as work performance information. Okay. So now we have the variance, this information for the schedule. Now we have this variance information for the cost. Okay. And if I have some variance in my schedule for one particular activity, it is definitely going to impact my entire project, isn't it? So what I'll do is, I will take this work performance information to this process, which is monitor and control project work. And here I am going to check how this deviation is going to impact my overall project. Okay. So here in this one, -2 days, I am talking about only one particular deliverable of that. What is the deviation in that deliverable? When it comes to this part in monitoring control project work, I will look at the overall impact of this deviation, and then I am going to publish my work performance report. And that report will say, because of this deviation, the milestone which you are supposed to achieve on 10th of May is now estimated to be completed on 15th of May or 12th of May. Okay, so that is your work performance report. So the important information that we learned in this one is the difference between work performance data, work performance information, and work performance reports. Is that clear to everyone? Just write it here in the chat window so I can find out. Okay, thanks, Randy. Fantastic. Okay, so there is a question from Randy. Randy, I think you probably missed the earlier session. I had taken this team to the beginning of this one, why it is starting from the 4. So we have chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 like this. So in first 3 chapters, we have introduction to the project management, project management, framework, organization, and also the process framework. So the knowledge areas start from the chapter number 4, and that's why we have this starting from 4. In case if you have some more doubt, I will, after the session gets over, you please stay on for a few more minutes and I'll take you through that. Okay, so the question from Mickey is, can you say what WP reports again? Okay, fine. I'll take you through that. We did some work, and as a result of that work, we got deliverable and the work performance data, which is nothing but the raw data. Okay, we took this raw data to that corresponding control process, like this duration information we took to control schedule, and cost information we took to control cost. And there we did the variance analysis for that specific element of the project. And that gave us work performance information. So a particular task or deliverable was delayed by 2 days. So what impact this delay of 2 days is going to have on the overall project? So let me draw something quickly here. If your activities, your tasks are scheduled like this. Sorry. If your tasks are scheduled like this, right now you're working at this task and this got delayed, there is a negative variance of 2 days here. Okay, so your work performance information will talk about only this part of the work. But when you take this to your monitor and control project work, here you are going to check the overall impact of this deviation, that how the future activities are going to get impacted, and if there is a milestone at end of it, what will be the impact of that. So you prepare a work performance report, you prepare a WPR here, and you are going to say, because of this deviation here, So this is how the plan is. I'm sorry for my poor drawing here. This is how we have progressed so far, and based on this progress, this is our forecast. Okay, so this information is going to come up in your work performance report. Overall progress information will be a part of your work performance report. Okay, similar way, your cost, variance at cost, that again will be taken to the monetary control project work, and here it will tell you that okay, the overall spend so far was supposed to be $1,000, but we ended up spending $1,100 or $1,025, and if we continue to be at this pace, by the time the project gets over, we would have overspent by, let's say, $200 or $500. That is your work performance reports. So always remember, work performance data is a raw data. Work performance information is a analyzed data for that specific deliverable or the activity. And work performance report is your complete project information, which is published electronically about the overall project. Okay, is it clear now? Okay, is WPI report an input for the closed project processes? No, it is not an input, but this report will be archived. You will update your OPF with this. And when you go to when all the deliverables, okay, let me take you to this slide. When all the deliverables of this project are completed, okay, when you have done this entire process, you have done this multiple times, everything is done, and then you will take it to this last process, which is closed project or phase, and that is a time when you have to do some post-mortem or the review of how the project was done, and that is a time when you are going to pull out all the WPI report. Let's say in a charter or maybe before charter, customer put a condition that if you miss any of the milestone, we are going to put 5% of the total invoicing amount or billing amount as a penalty. So during the closed project phase, you will check how many milestones you missed, how many milestones you overachieved, or how the project work was done. And based on your agreement, you will take a call. So Themba has a question, will that not have been a mistake during estimation, lack of Themba, there are multiple factors which may be out of our control, and that is why we need to do this monitoring and controlling more religiously and more rigorously. Okay, you did the estimation based on certain factor. Let's say, let me put it this way: you have a new resource in the team who comes with 10 years of experience, so you assume that resource will be able to complete the work in time. But when that resource starts working, you realize that he is not as capable and as efficient that as he had mentioned in his CV. Because of that, the work is now getting delayed, deviated. So of course, it was a mistake, but again, there was no way in the world you could have identified that in the initial stage. And that is called as experience. Okay? So you as a project manager will have to identify, you will have to find out what corrective or what preventive actions you are going to take for that. Okay, so that you do not repeat this in future, and that is the purpose of having these checkpoints on a frequently basis. So you can take the question, you can take the corrective or preventive actions in time. Okay, so Dennis has a question, how to calculate the cost, what should be considered? Yes, for cost estimation, we need to go through the details of this estimate cost process. So these processes, estimate cost. Estimates cost is heavily dependent on your estimation of resources and estimate of activity duration, and also the work that they're going to do in defined activities. We do not have luxury of time to get into the details of this, but I will be glad to answer your questions after the session gets over, or maybe sometime later. Okay. So coming back to my slide here, PDCA. Okay, just one point to add, Dennis. I have very interesting topic here, that is earned value management. So during the earned value, we may not be able to check the estimate, but we will definitely do the variance analysis. Okay. So we will keep on doing this, and we'll repeating this cycle until and all the deliverable, all the work is completed, and then only we'll go to the closed project or phase process. Okay. So I will not get into the detail of each and every process. We need to check for control cost, scope, schedule, cost, quality. But one important point that I want to emphasize on the difference between this control quality, control scope, and validate scope processes. This is something where I have seen most of the people make mistakes while answering the question. So let us understand this slide here. Okay. So I will start from this direct and managed project work. When you're doing the work, you will have the deliverable and work performance data. And I hope everyone understands what this deliverable or work performance data are. Deliverable is your work result, and the work performance data is the raw data. Okay. So let's say the soup. You prepared the soup, and now the soup is ready. Once the soup is ready, you will take it to the control quality. Control quality, I told you, is a process which is done only when you have any finished deliverable or the work result. You cannot do this process halfway through. Okay. Suppose you agreed with your customer or with the stakeholder that you will do a report or you will do the project review on a frequently basis, at a particular frequency. Let's say daily basis or weekly basis. Now at that point of time, irrespective of whether the deliverable is complete or not, you will check whether the work is being done as per plan or not, whether it is as per the scope requirements or not. Okay, so that is something you do in the control scope. So if in a week's time you are supposed to complete 60% of the work, so you will check whether you have completed 60% of the work or not. Okay. If yes, fine. If no, then you need to find out why there is a deviation. And you do the root cause analysis, find out the reason for the deviation, find out the reason why you are not able to complete the time. And if needed, you raise a change request. For example, let's say resource was not working. The resource that you have is very slow, or maybe for some reason he is not available. Because of that, the entire work is delayed. So you're supposed to complete 60% of the scope of the deliverable, but you have completed only 40% of that. So you will raise a request that I want to change this resource. Even project manager does not have an authority to make any changes after the plan is finalized and the baseline was saved. So suppose the deliverable is completed, and once it is completed, then it will go to the control quality. So I will get back to my favorite example of soup. Okay. Chef prepared the soup, and now the time to do the testing. So chef will do the taste, will taste it, and chef says it is perfectly fine, yummy, it is exactly as per the requirement given to me. So the input to the control quality process is called as deliverable, which is coming from direct and managed project work. And once the deliverable is checked by the internal team, okay, it will be called as verified or validated deliverable. So once the soup was prepared, chef tasted that soup, and once he gives okay and go ahead, it will be called as verified or validated deliverable. And then only it will be presented to the customer or any senior stakeholder who has the authority to say, yes, this deliverable meets the requirement, fulfills our expectation and requirement. And that you will do in validate scope. Okay. So important point to remember here is control quality is a process which is performed by the internal team. If you are in IT, you will probably do the testing. If you are in construction, before you go to hand over the building or your work to your customer, it will be checked by the internal team. They will take the measurement whether it is done or complete as per requirement or not. Once it passes through the internal check or QC, then only it will be presented to the final to the end customer. Or now this from as per PMI, this your key stakeholder can be your customer. It can be, sometimes it can be the project manager, sometimes it can be the sponsor also. Whoever has authority to say that yes, this work is completed will be a part of this validated scope. So chef prepared the soup, he tasted it, he verified and validated that, and now it will go to, let's say, the restaurant manager. So before the soup goes to the customer, or the manager will check, or maybe it will straight away go to the customer. So it will come to you and you will taste that and you'll say, yummy, delicious, it is exactly as per requirement. And then it will be called as accepted deliverable. Okay, and this will be a part. So when you are closing the project, when all the deliverables are completed, then you're going to review the list of all the accepted deliverables. So think it this way: you order your soup, you order, let's say, 4 or 5 dishes in the main course, then you order some desserts. So it is not that every time they are serving you a dish, they are going to give you a bill along with that. Yeah. So they are going to give you all the deliverables, all the dishes that you had asked for. Once you complete everything, and once you are done with that, you wash your hands, you ask for a check, then only you're going to receive the check, where you will see, okay, soup was fine, main course was fine, dessert was fine, or in case if there was any problem, you will say the soup was not as per requirement. I had asked you for a spicy soup, but you gave me a mild spicy or low spicy soup. So I will not agree to it. If the soup was not presented in a right fashion, you will say, I'm okay, I had to pay for that, but I'm not happy with the services. If the dish, if the bowl in which it was served, that bowl was not clean, that was a deviation from the internal or implicit quality requirement. You will say, you gave me soup in a dirty bowl, I am not going to pay for that. Okay, so all these things you are going to review during your close project. So just going one step backward, if the chef, when he was testing the soup, if he had found that the soup is not as per the taste or the requirement given to him, it will again require a change, wherever is needed. It may be in the quality of the ingredients, it may be in the time, it may be in terms of process or anything. And that request will go to your integrated change control process. No one in the project has authority to make any changes without getting approval from the change control board. Once it is approved by the change control board, then it will go to your, it will be updated into the PM plan, and you will have to redo the work in direct and managed project work and repeat the entire cycle. If chef tasted that and passed it, it goes to the customer, and customer says, no, this is spicy, it's fine, but it is still thin, it is watery, I cannot accept it. Can you change this? Can you give me another bowl of soup? So customer has rejected the deliverable here. So it is no longer accepted deliverable. From here, again, the team will find out why it failed. It will go to integrated change control, and you will follow the process, and you'll repeat the process, and you will keep on doing this until you have the accepted deliverable coming from the validated scope. And then only it will be a part of your list of all the accepted deliverables, which you are going to review when you are closing the project, that whether all the deliverables that you're supposed to deliver were accepted by the customer or not. Okay, so I'll reiterate on few points. First is, control quality is done only when the deliverable is completed or finished. Okay, control scope is not dependent on the completeness of the product or the deliverable, but it is related to the frequency, or it is related to this work that, at any particular point of time, how much work was supposed to get over and how much you have done. Okay, so at any given point of time, let's say you are supposed to complete 50% of work and you have done 40% of work, completed only 40% of work. So that comparison you will do in control scope. Okay? And control quality is always done by the internal team, but validate scope is something where you're going to present your deliverable to any stakeholder who has authority to accept or say this deliverable is completed. Okay. And remember these three terms: deliverable, verified or validated deliverable, and accepted deliverable. Deliverable is a raw deliverable coming out from your direct and managed project work. Verified or validated deliverable is coming out from your control quality, which is done by the internal team. And once the customer accepts it, it will be called as accepted deliverable. Okay, so that was a very important point I wanted you to understand. And let me now look at the questions. Okay, Rajneesh, it's 2 a.m. here. Yes, definitely you're going to get the recording link. And okay, he has already gone. And Themba has a question. When can a project be cancelled or parked? Themba, that actually can be done at any point of time. At any point of time, if your leadership team, if your project management or your senior management team or the customer, if they feel that the project is no longer making sense or it is not aligned to the organizational objective, they have a right to cancel it. Okay, so there is no point that you cannot cancel it for a project before this. It can get cancelled at any point of time. Sanjeev has a question. In the previous diagram, could you mean the monitor and control block? Okay, so monitor and control project work is a process. And as I told you, your control scope, control schedule, control cost, control quality, these are the processes which will check or which will do the variance analysis only for that specific element of the project. But monitor and control work is a process which will compare the results or which will do the variance analysis for the overall project. And it will also give you the forecasting for the overall project. Okay. Thanks a lot, Themba, for this your remark and appreciation. Thank you. So Sanjeev, I hope I was able to explain this. Are you clear with this, or you want any further explanation? Okay, I'll consider no news as a good news. Okay, yes, Sanjeev. With respect to the previous diagram, let me go to the slide here. Okay, and let me reduce the size. Do you mean this slide which I'm showing right now? Okay. Monitor and control project work. So every time, whatever you're doing, irrespective of whether there is a deviation or not, you will have to go to monitor and control project work. Let's say you completed a deliverable. It passed the control quality process. It was accepted by the customer also. It does not mean that you need not to do this process. You will still have to do this process because one of the important output of this monitoring control project work is work performance reports. Work performance report is a electronically published data or a graph or S-curve or the overall project progress data, which will tell you, okay, by this time we were supposed to complete 10 deliverables and we have completed all 10. And based on the progress so far, this is a projection that we have for the future. That we are assuming that entire work will be done in time and within cost. Or if there are any deviation, we can do the forecasting that looking at the current scenario, this is the amount of deviation we expect towards the end of the project. So Themba is asking, is monitoring and controlling performed throughout the project? Yes, Themba, it is performed throughout the project. Okay. This is something you need to keep on doing repeatedly until all the work or all the deliverable is completed. What is the frequency that you will define? You as a project manager and the project team will define what should be the frequency of that. Okay. So we have all these processes here where we will do our controlling here. I will take back to this slide again. We will check for each and every element here. Okay, there is a question here. Let me just go through it. Okay, is there any recommended percentage of slippage over on time recommended for the project, or is this something? Yes, actually, Rory, very interesting question you asked. So what Rory is asking is the slippage. Who will define what is the permissible limit of variance? Very good question. That is something that you will agree as a project team. You will agree when your plan scope management, plan schedule management, plan cost management. For example, when you do your cost estimation, cost is dependent on so many factors. And many of them may be out of your control. For example, you do not control the inflation, or you do not control the price of crude oil in the international market. If that is going high, your project cost will increase, or if that is going low, it may impact your project positively. Sometime when the forex ratio goes low, it may impact your project negatively. So you will agree here that these estimates are close to the an approximation, and plus minus 2% or 3% variance is accepted, and you will keep that as a part of your reserve. Remember when I told you about when we were talking about the budget? So you will come up with the aggregated cost of each and every activity, and then you are going to add something for the reserve towards the contingency, or in case if there any inflation, cost ratio inflation or something. Similar way, when we are talking about the schedule, as a project manager, you must always keep some buffer. And remember, do not inform your customer about the buffer that you have. In fact, I personally suggest that you must not inform about this buffer to your senior management also. Okay, because this is something, this must be something private to you. Do not inform your team members also about it, because if you tell your team member, we are all human, and our psychology works like this, that okay, we have completed this work, but if I give it to you in time, again we have buffer of 1 day, so that's fine. Even if it is getting delayed, let it get delayed. We still have 1 extra day in our hand. No, that should not be the trend. So there is no percentage defined. You as a project team will define as that. So Thamba is asking, is 10%? I really cannot say anything on that. Depending on the organization. For example, you work in an organization which is working in a very, very niche area, or let's say very risk-prone area. Let's say you are in pharma industry. You are working on development of a new medicine. So in that kind of area, even a minor slippage in scope can be fatal. So you will say, we work on the 6th level of sigma, and the deviations cannot be accepted if they are beyond 99.99999. If the deviation is more than 2 parts per million or 1 part per million. If you are working with NASA, then of course this is going to be similar way. In terms of cost, you can take the hit, but not in terms of time, not in terms of scope. If a satellite has to be launched on a particular day, it has to go on that day. If you have sent a manned mission to in space to the International Space Station, and they have to come back at a certain point of time, they have to come back at a certain point of time. But if you are working on a website development and for some reason something got delayed, you'll say, okay, it is our internal website, we can afford 1 or 2 days delay. So it's all subjective. Okay, so these are the questions. How do we combine with the performance bonus? This is something that is offline, and it will be a part of your HR management policy, HR management plan. Okay, so I will quickly get back to your our slide here, and okay, so I hope this process is clear to everyone, and this is the logical sequence. And for the PMP examination, you must remember this, and you must understand the logical flow. More than remembering this, you must understand that what exactly happens, how the flow of information goes, and you must understand and learn the difference between your deliverable, verified or validated deliverable, and accepted deliverable. There may be a question in PMP like this, that okay, you are scheduling a meeting with one of the stakeholder, one of the customer. So which process you are doing? Are you doing your control quality, or you're doing your validate scope? If you have scheduled a session with your customer to review the deliverable, you're definitely doing validate scope. Okay. And I'm sorry, I missed, there was some few people raised their hand. I'm not able to figure out, but I hope your questions are answered. So with this, if you have any question, please type in now. So with this, I quickly move on to the next topic. Okay, not next topic, but the next process group, which is our closing process group. So in closing process group, we have 2 processes. on the lag stack diagram. Yes, Shrikant, we are going to cover that. That's the next topic I'm going to cover, which is our critical path. I'm going to come to that topic also. Okay. But let us cover these two processes. So close project or phase and close procurement. So develop project charter is the very first process in your project, and close project or phase must be and is the last process in your project. Before that, you need to close your procurements. If you have bought or if you outsource any work or you decided to procure something from outside, then you have to ensure that the procurement process or engagement with the vendor is also getting closed. So whatever work was being done by the vendor, you will do a review of that. You'll accept or agree on certain terms, and you're going to once the entire work to be done by the vendor is done, then you will close the procurement. You will do the negotiation. You'll find out how did the vendor perform, how many milestones they missed, and if there was any condition on that, you're going to take the appropriate action. Once this is closed, then you're going to close your project or phase. So close project or phase, one of the important input in this process is list of accepted deliverables. What we need is our project management plan and our accepted deliverable, and we will check with the key stakeholder or the customer whether all the work is done, all the deliverables are completed, and they were all accepted by the customer or the stakeholder. And then you will do the administrative closure. You will inform all the stakeholder that this project is completed and it is now formally terminated. So I'm talking about this page number 526 of the Pmbok, definitions. Make sure you go through this section, definitions, and after definition there is something called as acronyms. And you must go through these acronyms or the glossary also. Do not ignore this. Do not think that, okay, you have read entire book Pmbok, so we can avoid this. No, you must go through the glossary. You must go through all the acronyms, because for the examination, it is extremely important to become familiar with the Pmbok terminology. Okay, you may call this process of this work as any name in your organization, in your country, in your real life scenario. But when it comes to PMP examination, you must use the same definition, same terminologies which are being used by the PMI. So remember, go through this glossary section in detail. Do not miss it. Okay, and there is a question from Rory. Is notifying all the stakeholders of the closing for the project a part of the communication plan? Yes, you must inform all the relevant stakeholders. I will not use the word all the stakeholders. I will say relevant stakeholders. Okay, so let's say your vendor. The vendor completed the entire work. Okay, and that is in the overall project scale, it is actually somewhere in the midpoint. So when your project is completed, you need not to inform your vendor on that we have completed the project. You will notify only those stakeholders which are relevant. And who are the relevant stakeholders that you would have decided? You need to decide in the beginning of it, and that will be somewhere here. Identify stakeholder and your communication management plan. So the important topic that we are going to cover next is understanding critical path. Critical path is very, very critical with respect to the PMP examination, because you can expect approximately 7 to 8 questions. Sometimes it can be more than that, only and only from this topic. And they're all numericals in this. And these are all scoring questions. All you need to understand is what is critical path and how it is calculated. So critical path is basically a sequence of the activity which represent the longest path. Okay. So longest path in the project and also the shortest duration. So how critical path is identified? So critical path is the longest duration path and also the shortest time to complete the project. From the real life perspective or the PMP examination perspective, critical path is extremely important. So what we are going to discuss here is that how we can identify a critical path in a project. So it can be done using these three distinct operations or activities here. You calculate the forward pass, and then you calculate the backward pass, and then we calculate float. So let us see what this forward pass or backward path is. So I have a sample project here, very simple here. So I have task A. When the project kick starts, I have task A and D starting. Completion of that will lead into the start of B. And when the B completes, your C and E will start. Completion on C and E will lead into the start of F, and then our project will be finished. Now we need to identify what is a critical path here. So to identify critical path, first of all, we are going to calculate the forward path. Forward path means for each task, we will calculate what is the earliest start date and early finish date for each activity. It means earliest possible start date for A, and starting at this, what is the earliest time in which task A can be completed. So we are going to do this for all activities. Okay, let me just make some changes for task B. Okay, there we go. So we'll do it for all the tasks here. I'm so sorry. So there is some goof up here. So let us calculate this early start. Starting on project, when we are starting the project, on the day 1, task A will start. Having duration of 6 days, the earliest it can be finished is day 6. Why day 6? Because day 1 is inclusive. So you can count it starting on day 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The task A will get over on day 6. Okay. And the way you can, another way to calculate this is early finish is equal to early start, that is 1, plus duration, that is 6 days, minus 1. Because we are starting it on day 1, that's why we need to do the minus 1. In some of the projects or some of the people, actually they suggest that you start from day 0. In case if you are using day 0 as a starting date, then you need not to do this minus 1. It is just simple EF is equal to ES plus duration. Again, there is nothing right or wrong. This is a point of debate also, that we should start from day 0 or day 1. There is nothing right or wrong. I stick to the policy of starting at day 1. So I'll go with that. In case if you want day 0, you can just make some changes to that and you'll get the same results. So starting on day 1, it will get over on day 6, and task D, which is a parallel task, will start on day 1, and starting on 1, having duration of 7 days, it will get over on day 7. Task A and D, completion of these two will kickstart the start of task B. So even though task A is getting over on day 6, but task D is getting over on day 7, and B cannot start until A and D both are over. So the earliest start date for B is day 8, and starting on 8 having duration of 5 days, earliest finish date for task B is 12. Finish of B will kickstart C and E. So since B is getting over on 12th, task C and task E both will start on day 13. Task C having duration of 8 days, it will get over on day 20. And task E having duration of 9 days, it will get over on day 21. C and E both are getting they are getting over on 20 and 21 respectively, and finish of these two activities will kickstart task F. F has two predecessors, so it cannot start until both are finished. So the earliest start date for F is day 22, and having a duration of 5 days, it will get over on day 26. So this is our forward pass where we calculate early possible start date and early finish date for each and every activity. Is it clear to everyone? Anyone has any question in the forward pass? Okay, thank you. So once the forward pass, you have calculated the forward pass, now we need to go backwards. We will calculate backward pass. And backward pass is, we will start from this last day, and we will calculate the late start and late finish for each and every activity. Okay, early, here we calculated early start, early finish, and now we are going to calculate late start and late finish. So going backward, this task is getting over on date 26. Finishing on day 26. To allow this to finish on day 26, latest by which it must start is day 22. Okay. To allow F to start on 22, C and E both must get over on day 21, latest by day 21. Now here, task C, to get over on day 21, latest by which it must start is day 14. And task E, to get over on day 21, latest by which it must start, task E must start is day 13. So C and E both are starting on 14 and 13 respectively. Okay. C has no issues, but E has to start on 13. So task B must get over on day 12. If it goes beyond day 12, then this task will be delayed. So B has to get over on day 12, and to get over on day 12, latest by which it must start is day 8. And to allow task B to start on day 8, task A and D both must get over on day 7. And task A to get over on day 7, latest by which it must start is day 2. And D to get over on day 7, latest by which it must start is day 1. Okay, so this is your backward pass. Any questions on the backward pass? Is it clear to everyone? Yeah, Shikant, how did we get 2 as latest start? Okay, I will come to that. I'll explain that. Here you can see task A has a duration of 6 days and task D has a duration of 7 days. So task A and D both must get over on day 7. And task A to get over on day 7, latest by which it must start is day 2. Because if you count backwards from 7, so it is 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, day 2. How I calculated this, I mean, you can use this formula as well here, which probably you're not able to see. Okay, I'm sorry, it is missed in this one, but you need to include this day 7 in this. So 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. It must start on day 2. So that is the latest start date. It means if it goes beyond day 2, then you will not be able to complete it on 7. It will get pushed beyond this. Is it clear? Okay, thank you. And after we calculated the forward pass and backward pass for each activity, now is the time to calculate float. So formula for float is, I'll take you to the next slide. Formula for float is LS minus ES or LF minus EF. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to find out what is the float here. So LF minus EF, 26 minus 26 is 0, or LS minus ES. So that is also 0. Okay. You need not to do both. You need to do just either LF minus EF or LS minus ES. And you do this for all the activities, and then you will be able to see the float here. So for task F, the float is 0, C is 1, E is 0, B is 0, D 0, but A 1. And wherever you see the float as 0, it means it's a critical task. Now, let us look at this again. Task A, it has an option that it can start on day 1 and finish on day 6. Or it can start on day 2 and finish on day 7. Okay. No matter what path you take, it is not going to impact the next activity. Suppose there is a delay of 1 day in this activity. Let's say activity A gets delayed by 1 day. Is it going to impact B? No. Because you have a buffer of 1 day. You have the float of 1 day. So float, slack, or buffer, they are all one and same thing. Okay. If you look at task D, so no matter what path it is using, forward pass or backward pass, it has to start on day 1 and it has to get over on day 7. It cannot afford even a single day of delay. There is no buffer here. There is no float here. If this task gets delayed, your overall project finish date will also get impacted. Your next task will get impacted, B, and your finish date will get impacted. You will not be able to finish this on day 26. Okay, so that's why this will be identified as a critical task, and all the critical tasks will form your critical path. Can you guess why we identify this critical path? Can you type in your chat window what is the purpose of or what we are going to achieve by identifying critical path? Okay, I can see few answers here. Identify your schedule dates. Randy, yes, you're correct, but that you can identify even without identifying the critical path. And yes, Shrikant, you got it right. Ensure there is no slippage on the critical path. And Randy, you are absolutely right to determine what task to monitor closely. I'll add this word, closely. And shortest time for the project, schedule variance, yes, absolutely correct. So the purpose of identifying critical path is so that you can allocate your resources in such a way that they have minimum impact on your overall project schedule, and also during the course of the project. In case if there is any deviation, so you can find out, or in case if you need to squeeze your schedule, you know that which activity you need to pay attention to. So you will monitor these critical activities very closely. You will do the resource allocation, and if you have identified the critical path, you can do it by having minimum impact on the overall project schedule. Okay. In case if you need to squeeze your schedule, or you need to cover up, there is a delay and you need to take some corrective actions, or you need to fast track your project, so you know which are the activities you need to pay attention to. So there is a point, what paths are high risk? Yes, the critical path means it is on a very high risk with respect to the schedule. Remember, this word critical has absolutely nothing to do with the nature of the work. It is associated only with the criticality of that task with respect to schedule. The impact of the schedule of the task on the overall project completion date. And that's the reason we need to identify the critical path. Yes, Thambi, you are absolutely correct. This is for the prioritization. Which task should get priority, which one should not. So with this, we need to understand one more topic with respect to the critical path, the float. So there are two types of float. There are actually multiple types of float, but I will talk about only these two. One is a total float, and second is a free float. Just remember, the definition can be confusing right now, but remember, whenever we talk about total, the moment you see this word total, it means we are talking about the impact of delay on the overall project duration. Whenever we talk about the free float, it means we are talking about the impact of delay on the successor or next activity. In PMP examination, if you see this word just float, if it is written only float, do not get confused whether it is a free float or total float. Float or total float is one and same thing. If PMI has to ask you any question specific to the free float, they will write it explicitly as a free float. Okay. So, is it clear to everyone? And formula for float or total float is simple: LS minus ES or LF minus EF, which is here. You need to calculate LF minus EF for each activity and you'll find the float. Now, the formula for free float. Free float means amount of time by which an activity can be delayed without affecting the successor or next activity. So how to calculate the free float? is early start of successor. For example, if I ask you, what is the free float of task C? So free float of task C means early start of successor. What is the successor of C? Task F. And what is the early start of F? 22. 22 minus early finish of the predecessor. Which is the predecessor activity here? C. So 22 minus 20, and because we are using day 1 as our base or the starting day, we need to do minus 1. So 22 minus 20 minus 1 is your 1, which is your free float. In this example, our total float and free float is same. Float for this task and free float is same, but you may get a very complex question in the PMP examination where it will be different. Anthony, you lost my voice. Are you all able to hear me clearly? Can you just confirm it on the chat window? Okay, so maybe Anthony, you need to check something on your side. I'm so sorry for this inconvenience. Okay, so Rory has a question. Task A and task C each have float of 1. Okay. Okay, I got your point. So when I say calculate the total float does not mean that you're going to do this 1 plus 1. No. We do not calculate for the total float for the entire project. No. The word float, be it total float or be it free float, it is always with respect to one single activity. The only difference is total float means amount of time by which one particular activity can be delayed without impacting your overall project duration, overall project finish date. Okay, and when we talk about the free float, amount of time by which an activity can be delayed without impacting the next task. Do not think that the moment you see total, you have to add up entire float. No, never. You will never ever do that. Okay. Randy, very interesting question. On the PMP examination, would we expect to see a diagram like this? No. You will never get this diagram, but what you need to, you are going to get this in the text form. It will be in a paragraph form. So whenever you do get this question for the critical path, do not try to do any mental calculation, mental math. You will be given a piece of paper and a pencil. Draw exactly similar kind of diagram in the rough notebook which is given to you. Okay, put 4 corners in each of the box and calculate early start, early finish, late start, late finish for each activity and connect them as per the sequence or predecessor information given in the question. Then only you should do that. Okay. So this is the way we are going to identify our critical path.